Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Tonight we welcome Stephen Moore, founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project, to discuss the high-stakes diplomatic manoeuvres shaping the future of Ukraine. With US Envoy Keith Kellogg in Kyiv to meet with President Zelenskyy, and the recent Riyadh talks between the US and Russia, where Ukraine was notably absent, many questions arise about the expectations for Kellogg's visit and the impact of these negotiations. Stephen, thank you for joining us. Welcome to TVP World.
Thanks. Great to be with you always.
Thank you. Good to have you, sir. So let's talk about General Kellogg's visit to Kyiv. He says that he's there to sit and listen. What do you think Ukraine or President Zelenskyy wants to tell him?
I would say General Kellogg is having a really bad day. I'm here in the U.S. House of Representatives. I've been talking to people. I think what Kellogg is hearing from Zelenskyy is that you guys need to traffic in the truth. And Donald Trump put out a Truth Social post earlier today that was riddled with inaccuracies. And I think it's a Trump method of pushing Zelenskyy. He's always, Trump's method of negotiating is to ask for the world to push back really hard and then see what he can get. And but Kellogg is hearing a lot about that today.
Right. He's then going to go back to President Trump, and he and the other advisors are going to thrash out some kind of response, decisions on the next steps. I'm looking the crystal ball here, Stephen. Tell me what you see them agreeing to do.
Well, yeah, listen, I hate to use American sports analogies on a European TV show, but we're in the first inning here. We're just at the beginning. There's a lot of water that is going under this bridge before there's anything signed. And I think that's important to think about. There is nothing signed. There is nothing definite. Nothing's etched in stone. And I think what you're seeing Trump do is, he made a campaign promise. He said, I'll end the war in 24 hours. He got into office and said, well, maybe it'll take 6 months. And I think if you look at what he said at just the week after he was inaugurated, he was taking pieces out of Putin. He was beating up on Putin. He was saying he was going to put tariffs on all Russian exports to the U.S. What he didn't notice was that that's only about $4 billion and negligible, not even a rounding error on Russia's exports. So, he was looking for leverage on Putin. Couldn't find it. So he said, well, what's the next easiest way for me to get a deal? Well, I'll put a lot of pressure on Zelenskyy. Let's see if he caves. So I think that's what's going on now. Trump is trying to find points of leverage in his negotiation. And Trump just wants the war to end. He doesn't necessarily think about how.
Or at what cost, perhaps. It seems, for example, that President Trump is actually, quoting the Kremlin line when he says that Zelenskyy isn't very popular in Ukraine, that another presidential election has to take place before any peace deal can be signed. Things like that. Putin must be rubbing his hands in glee, mustn't he?
You know what? It was a good day for Vladimir Putin. But, here's the way I see what's going on in the White House. There's a battle for Trump's ear. And the folks that are concerned about Ukraine because it's a linchpin for global stability are like Rubio, Waltz, Kellogg. I think they're on that side. And then there's folks that are less interested in the outcome of Ukraine. I think you'd probably put J.D. Vance and Tulsi Gabbard and some of the other folks in those camps. But there are people battling for Trump's ear. And, last month was a good month for the pro-Ukraine folks, and this month is not.
Understood. So how do you see things being thrashed out? Again, as I say, we're not sure which way who's going to get more of Trump's ear and which way he's going to land eventually. But do you see a situation where President Trump forces President Zelenskyy to give up land for peace. Do you see a situation where Trump says, "Well, we're not providing Ukraine with any more weaponry"?
Well, yeah, I think they'll probably try to get Zelensky to give up some of the territories. There's 3.5 million Ukrainians in those territories. Those people are living under the worst conditions in the world. We do a lot of work with Christians in Ukraine. They have shut down every church in occupied Ukraine. If you have a Bible study in your home, you risk torture and imprisonment. So the worst things in the world are happening to those 3.5 million people. And I think that the good thing that comes out of this is Europe is waking up. And listen, I have a huge admiration for the Polish people. Poland, along with Estonia and the UK, are the military leaders of Europe. And if this wakes up the larger economies like France and Germany and gets them in the game, or some of the really losers in defense spending like Spain and Italy, then there is a silver lining to this. And again, this is not over. What we're seeing is a series of bad days for the pro-Ukraine forces.
Understood. So it's early days yet. Let's see how things progress. Now, Stephen, one of the things that President Zelenskyy has always been very, very firm about is the need for security guarantees. It doesn't look like NATO's on the table. The next best thing, I guess, would be peacekeeping troops. What are your thoughts on that? Who should they be?
Yeah, I think that it is good for Europe to develop that sort of peacekeeping force. If Europe is called to participate in their own defense, I think that's a good thing. And here's why: because I view us as being in a global war right now. Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are all working together, and they're trying to cause chaos in the world. And if we're in that sort of situation, and bad things happen in Taiwan, in South Korea, if Iran starts going harder after Israel, we're going to need serious firepower from the Europeans. So I hate to have this message of doom, but I think that's the situation we're in.
Understood. Now, one of the other things, of course, that Putin said was that if there are peacekeeping troops, he doesn't want them to be from countries which are members of NATO, which sounds a little bit, well, I don't know actually what it sounds like, but I'm not sure quite who that would be. I know the Chinese have offered.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know the Chinese have offered, but I'm not sure who else might be interested in that job.
Well, and I think that if you follow everything that Trump says and obsess about it, you will develop a dependency on anti-anxiety meds and good Polish vodka. And so take Trump seriously, but not literally. And I think there's a lot of Republicans. There's multiple U.S. senators who are pushing back on this, and multiple more that are pushing back on it behind the scenes. There's a lot of Republicans in Congress that are willing to lose an election over the outcome of Ukraine. I think that sensible policy will prevail at the end.
Understood. Now, tell us something about the mood in the capital, the political mood in the United States about the war in Ukraine, because we do hear, lots of things. Well, Ukraine's a corrupt country. They've been getting all this weaponry from the US, and they haven't paid for it, and so on. But is that really representative?
Well, again, Poland is very familiar with the power of Russian propaganda, and there's been a big fire hose of Russian propaganda turned on the conservative voters, the Republican voters here in the United States, and so they have the wrong idea about what's going on in Ukraine, and so. There's again a lot of folks are rightfully concerned about the lackluster role of Europe in its own defense, and I think that's reasonable. A lot of people are concerned about the spending, which I think, again, that's something Europe could do. Europe controls the majority of the frozen Russian assets, some 300 billion worldwide. Belgium in particular could use those assets. $300 billion would, buy a lot of Patriot missiles and Challenger tanks. So there is a there's a lot of concern in the United States about continuing to be the world's policeman. There's also a lot of easy things that the Europeans could do to make a real difference.
Yes, understood. And as you say, it seems as though Europe is finally waking up and and investing in its defense industries. Now, China is obviously going to be watching the situation very, very carefully. What do you think they think at the moment is going on?
Well, I think China's watching this closely, and China is not necessarily interested in what happens to Ukraine, except that how it, how it impacts China. And Xi Jinping has said that they want to be ready. He says, "I want my military to be ready to go into Taiwan." He said, "My friends here in the military are acting on a timeline." In my view, if Putin is rewarded in Ukraine territory, and to Xi Jinping that it's all good, man. If you got an army, go in. And Kim Jong Un is the most stable world leader, and I think it tells him there will be minimal repercussions for better. So, and what message does this send?
Understood. Well, I suspect that President Trump is going to have to keep at least one eye on China because obviously the American response in Ukraine is going to inform China of how they might respond to an invasion of Taiwan. Stephen Moore, thank you very much for joining us and have a good day, sir.
Great to be with you.
Thank you. Bye-bye now. That's all from us in this episode of World Talks. Goodbye.